Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Ann. How are you?
I'm just fine. And we should introduce ourselves. People probably know who both of us are, but I'm Ann Althouse at the University of Wisconsin Law School in the blog Althouse, and you are?
And I'm Michelle Goldberg. I'm an author. My latest book is The Means of Reproduction, Sex, Power, and the Future of the World, and I'm also a columnist for the American Prospect.
So, Sex, Power, and the Future of the World, the subject is obviously Sarah Palin, right?
Yes. Not the subject of my book, but certainly the subject of the weekend.
Yeah. I'm just saying it seems that thematically, just making a segue. Well, you know, it's the holiday weekend, and we didn't really have anything planned for blogging heads, but something must go up about Sarah Palin, so we've been designated to say something about Sarah Palin.
Yes, into the breach.
We need to make something up because we don't really know what's going on, do we?
Well,
but I mean, at least one thing is, we get to stop talking about Michael Jackson, Michael Jackson's dead body, and we can talk about something new. We can finally stop talking about Michael.
We don't know what's going on, but one thing we do know is that, she's kind of exploded many of the expectations that people had for how the next couple of years of her political career were going to play out.
Well, yeah. So,
just tell me, what do you think she's up to? I mean, what do you, as long as we're speculating?
It was obvious. As soon as I heard the news, I put up a blog post and said, well, so then now it's obvious she's running for president. I thought everyone would say the same thing and that there was no other interpretation. But the fevered brains of America have come up with many interpretations.
Well, I'm actually amazed that you think that it's so obvious because it's such
I thought there was no other interpretation.
Here's what I thought. I do actually think that she could be running for president, but I also think that she's resigning to get out of the way of something. Like, my suspicion is that there really is something coming down the pike, either a scandal or else she just seems that she's going to keep getting battered for the next however many months of her administration, and that she's going to see her popularity ratings go down, she's going to see her effectiveness diminished, and so she thinks she's going to end up weaker as a candidate after finishing her term than she would be now, even though, to me, and maybe you have a different take, the idea of quitting your term incredibly abruptly with kind of this speech that was, to me, all the more insane for the fact that she had actually written it out, and so it wasn't just kind of extemporaneous incoherence.
Well, why did it seem insane to you? The charge that she sounded insane in the speech is, I think, an unfair one. I think she was clearly reading a speech, and I listened to it again. When the first time I heard the speech, I thought she sounded kind of breathless and flighty. But then I rewatched it today, just now, and I thought, well, the main thing is she's reading a speech. It's actually a carefully written speech.
But to me,
and
that's more astonishing. I think that it would be less
of a read speech is what we're hearing now.
See, I think it would be less astonishing if she had just been out there, kind of winging it. To me, the fact that she wrote this speech with all of its strange, meandering sentences, its terrible grammar, its clauses that went nowhere, its bizarre use of capitalization in the text, and kind of
I didn't read it. I heard it. I didn't.
If you read it, I mean, it looks like.
Well, I don't think she can be blamed for the way it was.
It looks like, the kind of a petulant complaint of a teenager committing something to a diary about how nobody appreciates her and nobody has, taken enough note of all the good work that she's doing, and so she's going to show that she's not a quitter by quitting.
Well, now wait, I don't think who transcribed it? I'd like to know before you say there's bizarre capitalization.
I'm pretty sure that she put up a transcript with the all caps, and then it went down and went up edited. But I mean, someone, if you're watching at home, Google it. But I'm pretty sure that's how it went down. It wasn't just somebody, because when I first read it, I think I first read it on Josh Marshall's site, and at first I thought that he had kind of put in these snarky all caps, like he was making fun of her diction. But then I read that no, this is the transcript that they actually released.
Well, okay, that might have been what went through the teleprompter, and there might have been. I haven't seen that, but there might be caps there to help her emphasize the right words. I think she sounded like someone who was not completely committed to the text that she had been put in a position where she needed to read it. I actually thought it was a pretty carefully written text. It had a lot of things that people had decided that she should say. I didn't get the impression that she personally wrote it or that it was her words exactly. I think there's more going on than what she was saying, which is I think she's running for president, so I don't think it sounded particularly honest. But why do it this way? I
mean, why quit, July 3rd before July, this kind of very
slipping
hastily.
it in when no one's looking. Obviously, it's designed to. And I also noticed it went up in the afternoon, right after there was time for Rush Limbaugh to put it up on his show. And he always complains when things come out when he can't get it up in time to cover it on his show. He always is accusing Obama of doing speeches like that. And he's been very positive about Sarah Palin. So I felt like, and he's also going to be on vacation all next week. So even in addition to it being the holiday weekend, the timing in the afternoon was, I think, right as the Rush Limbaugh show was ending, with him going on vacation next week. And I felt like, wow, she really undercut Rush Limbaugh, who's one of her big supporters. And that really struck me. In addition to it being the holiday, it's sort of as if they thought they could bury it under the news. But I think that the idea there is that she's decided that she needs to get out of Alaska, get out of the spotlight of being governor, get out of the line of fire where she'll be criticized if she travels around a lot and pays attention to other things. This way she's freeing herself from Alaska, but the idea that people wouldn't pay attention to it, well, I think it was placed where there would be the least possible attention to it. You have to put it somewhere. If you have to put it somewhere, wasn't that the best place to put it?
How does this work for her, though? If she's running for president, how does this work for her? I mean, here's the thing, and I have a much lower opinion of Sarah Palin than you do, and so to me I think that she might believe. I haven't said
how high my opinion is of her, but maybe yours is so
it's higher than mine.
What?
But I understand how a particularly addled and grandiose and vaguely delusional person might think that this is a decent stepping stone. But I guess if you don't see her in those terms, then I don't understand how anybody could think that this is a rational move.
You have to compare it not to the perfect way to run for president, but to the alternative that she's walking away from, running for president while being governor of Alaska with 18 months left to go, or freeing herself from Alaska and running for president, being the person
but she can just start running in 2010. She can finish her term.
I assume that she analyzed it with competent people. Now, maybe she didn't. Maybe she just talked about it with her family and her husband and her children, and they told her what to do. Maybe she doesn't really have advisors, but I think that she is the hope of a certain faction of people within the Republican Party who see her as a great figurehead like Ronald Reagan, who, if they could only upload enough information into her and manage her properly and run the campaign well, that she would be a great candidate. And then, given that, what's the best way for her to do it? Well, one thing is, you can't campaign from Alaska very effectively. Get her down here, and presumably she's going to help a lot of Republicans who are running in the 2010 elections. I think she needs to give a lot of speeches. She probably wants a lot more money than she has, both for a presidential war chest and for her own income. She can make a lot of money giving speeches. I think she needs to amass a lot of money, build support within a core group of people who already loves her, who are going to want to hear her, show that she can help people in the 2010 elections and build a lot of relationships, and also just bone up on the things she needs to know. And how does she then
get beyond the simple, the obvious attack ad, which is, Sarah Palin can't hack it. Sarah Palin quits when the going gets tough. Sarah Palin doesn't finish what she starts. To me, this is just so fatal to any idea of her as a competent administrator or a competent governor.
I don't think it's fatal. I think she's going to take that hit, but I think that she analyzed it as, pluses and minuses on both sides, and that argument, she quit. But you could hear the spin that she put on it in the speech that she made on Friday, which is that she thinks that there is a more effective way that she can help the country. She thinks that having a new governor who will be running for a re-election will be the most effective thing for her party. And so what remains to be seen is how effective she is in what she does next. And then if that goes well, then the argument she shouldn't have quit the governor will be overshadowed by the fact that actually it turned out to be a good strategy.
Right, you're right. If things go well, then then I'll have been proved wrong.
Yeah.
But I also have to say that at that speech, that I can do more for Alaska and the country from outside of Alaska, and also kind of she spoke about moving on to bigger things and national challenges. To me, it sounded so transparent and. I was thinking back, one of the things that happened in her very bad week was that CBS News released some of these emails between her and, I believe it was Steve Schmidt, where she was trying to get the McCain campaign to put out a statement saying that her husband had only joined the Alaska Independence Party by accident because he thought that it just said, independent Alaskan or something, and he's an independent Alaskan. And it was just 7 years later that he noticed it. And, and she had nothing to do with them. And, never mind all the video addresses she gave them, etc. It reminded me, I don't know if you've ever watched South Park, but it really reminded me of this South Park episode where Cartman is trying to explain to his mother why there are photographs of him filleting his friend Butters. It was the kind of ridiculous juvenile excuse that, I used to make to my parents when I came home smelling of liquor with cigarettes in my purse and explaining that someone must have dropped them there, and then I was walking through the park and someone spilled liquor on me. I mean, it just sounded so far-fetched in the way that she's, I thought that it was a kind of blatant last-minute rationale, that she had decided, maybe she just decided she couldn't take another minute. She's sick of being up in Alaska. She has a taste of the limelight. She doesn't want to deal with all these petty irritations all day.
That's not that she can't take it. That's
people
that she
thwarting
thinks
her,
she's
her
too
popularity
big for
plummeting,
Alaska.
everybody's making fun of her. She wants to be back in front of the crowds chanting, Sarah, Sarah.
Well, I mean,
there's people telling her that there's a future for her in the lower 48.
I don't think it means that she can't hack it. I think it means that she thinks she's cut out for bigger things, that she's got work to do, and hanging around in Alaska is not the best way to do it. Now, that could be wrong, but I think that I can still understand why that would be a rational conclusion, looking at the evidence, looking at the pluses and minuses on both sides, and we don't know all of what she was really looking at. We don't know what the plan really is, so... I don't think that it's that she can't hack something. It's that she has bigger plans that she intends to do. Now, I know some people are speculating that she just can't do it and she just wants to go home and take care of her children, and that's really...
I don't think that's true.
I've heard a lot of people say that this special needs child and so forth, and she just couldn't take being criticized so much, and her family needs her. I think some of that is well, you don't like that. It's a rather sexist kind of analysis, and it doesn't sound like anything else we've seen about her.
I mean, I don't mind. I mean, if I thought there was any truth to it, I wouldn't dismiss it on the grounds that it was sexist. I just, when I went to Wasilla not long after she was nominated, and one thing everyone spoke to me about was how kind of efficiently she had outsourced the raising of her children to various relatives. At one point, Bristol was living with one sister, Tripp, the older son, was living with someone else. The idea that all of a sudden now, after all these years, although I can only imagine the challenges of, caring for a baby or a toddler with Down syndrome, there's just been nothing in her history to me that suggested that. And I also think that if that was really what was at work, I don't know why she would have given this speech that was so hasty and also that promised bigger things. And she's continuing to talk about bigger things.
Oh, yeah, why not just sit tight and be mellow in Alaska, be governor, and be relatively invisible as she was before she got so famous last year? I mean, I don't see a reason to quit unless she's running for president. So it sounds like you agree with me. She's got to be running for president.
Well, I think either one of two things. I think either she's running for president or she's running to be, the kind of leader of the populist right. She's, maybe running to be like the female Sean Hannity or something, that she might just want
to...
Show. She could make a lot of money. She could be a popular speaker. She could, she would be kind of untethered from the demands of politicking. I think that she got a taste of a certain style of living that she now finds very tantalizing. And so, I think there's a possibility, it seems to me, that she just wants to make a lot of money and maybe be a TV star.
I'm sure she doesn't have as much money as she feels entitled to and able to just get. I mean, that would influence a lot of people. But I think, she wants to... but that goes along with running for president. I mean, it's by running for president that you keep attracting that money, I think.
Do you think she has a chance?
well, somebody has to be the Republican Party nominee.
Well, I wonder if there was something, if she just saw, I wrote about this in the Daily Beast, and I wrote about this before she quit, although I, kind of quickly updated it, that, it's possible that, although, like I said, I think Sarah Palin is profoundly unhinged, I also think that increasingly a good number of our leading politicians, I kind of wonder if it was ever thus. I've also come to learn that John Edwards was almost a sociopath.
I don't like this diagnosis of everyone as crazy. You probably saw Maureen Dowd's column in the New York Times today. Citing the DSM, the diagnostic, whatever it is, the manual.
Right, and you seemed
I
read that on your blog that you were irritated by that. I kind of agreed with you to the. I agree with you that those are kind of preconceptions in a certain sense for high-level political life, and that's kind of what I wrote about in the Daily Beast.
They all have narcissistic personality disorder. If we're going to go over the DSM checklist,
although I've got to say that there's a difference between
it's an under-analysis of politics to just look at the person and say they're crazy, because you could say they're crazy about all. Why would anyone want to go into politics? The common people can sit back and say, oh, they're all crazy, they're all corrupt, or whatever. I don't think that gets you anywhere. I just think,
I agree, but I
think you should
think
step
that
up and
what
analyze
is going on? I agree with you to a certain extent that yes, and I'm not a big throw the bums out, they're all corrupt in Washington. But I also, it's and it's not just that they have affairs. That's kind of normal human behavior. But what makes a person running for president, make a sex tape and, offer to, take care of one of your aides?
Let's make it clear that the sex tape accusation is against John Edwards. Not
right,
Sarah.
Exactly. So, to me, this is where you start tiptoeing over a line that separates, the kind of ordinary recklessness that probably is necessary for a person believing that they have a chance to be president in the first place, to something genuinely pathological. The same thing with Mark Sanford.
Do you think you don't think having an affair is crazy? And I heard you defend Governor Sanford in the dialogue that you did last week, right? You said
I don't think having an affair. I think going to
not leaving a forwarding
address.
But you think making a sex tape is crazy, because I think it may be stupid and reckless, but I don't think it's crazy. I think a lot of people do it. I've never done it.
Oh, no, it's not that I think making a sex tape makes an individual citizen crazy. Yeah. Making a sex tape in the modern world when you're running for president makes you. I'm not trying to judge the kind of sexual act. I'm not saying anyone out there who's ever made a sex tape has something wrong with them. But anybody who's running for president in this age, and, A, makes a sex tape, and B, gets involved with this, his kind of reported conversations with Andrew Young, asking him to take responsibility for this baby. It struck me as someone who is, not just kind of ordinarily reckless, but that there's something wrong.
Well, that he's someone who thinks that the rules don't apply to him, and I think John Edwards. I think John Edwards really is a disturbing case. I was talking with Bob Bright a week ago in a dialogue here about the Governor Sanford, and I was distinguishing him from John Edwards, too. I think there's something unsympathetic about John Edwards. There's something that is really irritating to women, especially. But women seem to be giving Mark Sanford a pass.
Yeah, well, this is what I think is
you specifically did. You kind of liked him because he was passionate. I was doing that, too.
But I guess I have mixed feelings. On the one hand, yes, I thought that he seems to be genuinely in love with this woman. I have, a fair amount of sympathy. I think to myself, what if I had not met my husband when I did, and instead I had married someone else, and then I had met him late in life? I could be, living a similar situation right now. I'm a romantic in that sense, even though I don't think you should. Even though it's kind of unforgivable to betray your wife and family the way he did, or it's more than kind of. It is unforgivable. But I also, do you think that Sanford deserves to, or should leave office, not because of the affair, but because of leaving the state, not telling anyone where he
going?
went. I mean, I've heard people make the argument that he should leave even if he really was hiking on the Appalachian Trail.
Well, I think the idea that if you're a governor, you're always on call. If there's some rule like that, and if you ever go off the grid while you're governor, aren't there examples of it? Didn't Teddy Roosevelt do that when he was president? And this idea that he must always be on call because the state has to have someone at the top, I guess, in case we're going to war or something like that. It's not the same as the president. I don't know. So if there's some rule that governors must always be on call, I think that would be bad if he broke it. But I don't think there is some stated rule like that. I don't think states fall apart that easily. Maybe if there's a death penalty and there's a question of someone going to an execution and a pardon could come in at the last minute.
But just the idea that you would be unreachable. I mean, not necessarily that you're on call, but that someone knows how to get a hold of you, or that somebody knows where you are. That strikes me as, it would be true of the CEO of any company, as far as I know, that you don't get to, disappear and not leave at least a forwarding address or not check your email, or, kind of being in, that you can't go several days in a row at a high-level position, kind of completely off the grid. I thought that was something of a condition that was kind of taken for granted, I guess, at leadership at that level.
Inadvisable, but I don't think he's the elected governor of the state, and I don't think he needs to act like he's done something that horrible just because people didn't know where he was for a few days.
But to me, that is the part that is the real kind of
right.
That's what he deserves chastisement for.
I don't think that governors or any elected officials should have to quit because they cheat on their spouse.
Right. And I think that we can both agree with that.
It's bad. The whole issue of how morally wrong it is and whether these spouse ought to forgive them or whether people should shun them and so on, I think it has nothing to do with their public position. Although I know some people say if you can't trust them in keeping their marriage vows, you can't trust them in anything. I don't really think that's true. I think a lot of people cheat on their spouses, especially a lot of men who are driven and have the kind of aggressive personality that will get them into office. I think a lot of those people do act it out in a sexual way, and I don't think we should forfeit the service of men who fall into that category. I think a lot of people who are good in their official duties are bad in their private life, and they shouldn't have to quit because of it. So I would support him for that. But if he's flaky, if he is nutty and he's behaving irrationally because he's in love,
he's behaving
then
crazy.
Maybe he should leave it. I don't like to tar people as crazy that easily, but he did seem a little wacky. But apparently that made a lot of people, including you, and kind of including me, like him more because
right. But we're not his constituents.
His
I think that
made it seem like he really loved that woman.
Right, but I don't know if that's I mean, I have no idea how that plays in South Carolina, but I certainly, he might have endeared himself to certain kind of coastal blue state liberals for whom, weekend trysts in Buenos Aires sounds fabulous, but I don't know that it's going to, he's built a career that's he's built a career that kind of depends on him being a Christian family man.
Well, it's part of Christianity is that you forgive people.
Right.
Jesus forgave the
right, and part of Christianity is also that the reason you set norms so high is not necessarily because you believe, is in part because you're always kind of striving and you know that you'll always fall short. I guess that was kind of the same reason that people were so ready, or that people on the right had no real problem with Bristol Palin.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the blue staters don't really get that, but I think that the conservative Christian position is that people do sin, but you have to go about getting forgiveness the proper way, and if you're duly contrite, then you're still in the religion.
But maybe part of his problem is that he's not duly contrite. I think that he's, saying, I met my soulmate, and he doesn't mean his wife, and that he's now and that it was worth it, even if it destroys his presidential ambitions. He doesn't sound contrite. He sounds like deeply torn, and to the extent that he's deeply torn, I sympathize with him on a human level, even though I glory at the sight of one Republican contender after another self-destructing.
But I think even from a conservative, Christian, conservative social values position, I think that you have a more positive view of someone who commits a sexual wrong because he really is overcome by passion. Than someone who coldly goes out and takes what he figures he can get. That sort of cold assertion of the power that he has, the exploitation that we saw from Bill Clinton and John Edwards. That is different from the you just fell in love and
right. It's a tragic love story.
What?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but I still. Again, I agree with you, but I'm not sure if it seems to me that this man who once tried to radiate, both kind of solid Christian family values and a certain amount of seriousness and gravitas, I might be have softened to him a bit because he seems like a, lovesick teenager, but I can't imagine that that's doing much for his for his constituents.
If I could drag Rush Limbaugh back into this again, he's been talking the last 2 weeks about people like me and you who were pretty sympathetic to Sanford because he was really in love, and he's been just incredulous and mocking and talking about, especially the liberal women writers, journalists who are who were just thrilled with this guy because he really loved her.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm thrilled with him. I mean, I certainly I think that what I feel for him is something less than utter contempt. It's like definitely tinged with human sympathy in a way that I don't feel incredulous in a way that I felt incredulous when I found out about, say, Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, with Bill Clinton, Bill Clinton did seem to have an emotional problem where he had trouble controlling himself, but if you think that someone who has all of this, who has an important career in front of him, that he would throw it away for something that was something short of the love of a lifetime, why would he bother to do it? Why would he do these tawdry little things like Bill Clinton in the Oval Office with the pizza and the
Right,
cigar?
I would have felt better actually about Bill Clinton's affair if they had actually had a proper affair.
Yeah. Yeah. But. Yeah, but it does seem like he does have an emotional problem, that he would throw his potential away for something that small.
Who are you talking about now, Sanford or Bill Clinton?
Now I'm talking about Bill Clinton.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree with you, but now, so there's certain people that you are willing to diagnose.
Sanford seems to have just thrown it all away for something that was huge to him, that was like real love that we all always talk about finding. So
why is it that Rush? I mean, I guess I shouldn't even ask, but I'm actually curious. Why is it that Rush Limbaugh finds this particularly such an absurd?
A theme of Rush Limbaugh's is, and this is his term, not mine, the chickification of the news. And he was mocking he's a lot of his show is about criticizing media, criticizing the journalists, and he was mocking the female journalists who were sympathetic to Sanford, especially since presumably these were mostly liberal women, and they're usually very hard on these Republican social conservatives who commit their sexual sins, which seems to happen every other week. And here they were being sympathetic to Sanford, and his theory is that news journalism is for women now, and so they go for these certain type of stories that appeal to women, and this one fit into that category, and that was just ridiculous.
Well, and then what is the other side? That like male journalists would be sympathetic if he had been out banging Megan Fox or something? Like, I couldn't let that chance pass up.
No, I think that they just wouldn't spend time on camera gushing over love.
Right.
It just wouldn't be part of the news. If it was for men, they would tell the story and get on with it, and then get on to the next story and tell us what's happening on Wall Street and in Iraq and so forth.
Right. As far as I'm not a frequent listener to Rush Limbaugh, but I imagine that he's been spending much more time on the maneuverings in Iran than on either Sarah Palin or Mark Sanford. I mean, the chick.
Sarah Palin came in after the last show.
Well, certainly. But I'm going to, maybe I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, I apologize, but I'm going to guess that he has spent more time on Mark Sanford than on Iran, and
he has spent more time. Most of his time he spends on the economy and on Obama, and on the health care proposals, the different.
Well, how about how much time he spends on? I mean, I also got to guess that he would spend a lot more time on that he's probably spent more time on John Edwards than on. That he probably spends more time on Democratic sex scandals than on Republican. Although again, that's just a guess.
He's a little more severe toward the liberals than the Republicans.
So let's return to Sarah Palin, because what I was saying, the thing that I wrote, initially I wrote this piece again before she quit. I wrote this piece saying that, yes, by all accounts, you look at the DSM. Look at narcissistic personality disorder. It does sound about right as a description of Sarah Palin, and it also sounds about right as a description of Newt Gingrich and John Edwards, and maybe even Bill Clinton in terms of
Barack
this kind
Obama and Hillary Clinton.
I actually disagree. I disagree about Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. To me, they seem there's less of a sense of this kind of antinomianism. There's less of a sense of the rules that apply to other people don't apply to me. I think that there may be, they have grand.
But they want to be.
They have a grand sense of their own talents and destiny. But it's, to me, honestly, I think it's an entirely different thing for a Barack Obama to believe that he has what it takes to be president, and for a Sarah Palin. One of those strikes me as delusional to the point of being clinical.
Well, it wasn't delusional of Barack Obama to think it because it actually happened. And
well,
so
because it was actually an
apt
estimation of his own talents. I think that it
was an apt estimation of our shared delusions, because he, in fact, wasn't properly credentialed to run for president. He figured out that he could do it, that he could exploit some emotional issues that America has.
And also that he's an incredibly smart, incredibly capable.
Yeah, he's smart. He was capable of becoming president.
For example, it was not it's not delusional for a Carrie Prejean or whatever to think she could be Miss California. It would be delusional if I thought I could be Miss California. We both maybe start with same kind of long shot ambition, but one of them is at least within the kind of realm of possibility, and the other one is just preposterous. The idea that Sarah Palin looks at the work that Barack Obama does, or even what any president has done, and thinks to herself, I could do that, and that anybody agrees with that.
But it's a fluid situation, and in a world where Barack Obama, with the record that he had, became president, then the question is, what's next? And what's next could be Sarah Palin, because that's how unusual American politics has become.
I guess I find it astonishing.
An attractive figurehead, and you run the campaign successfully, and you manipulate people's minds well enough, then that person, under-credentialed though they are, could become president. And
to me, there's a difference between being under-credentialed and being just under-capable. I mean, I'll go back to that speech that Sarah Palin wrote, and again, look it up. This is someone who isn't fit to, be the principal of a middle school, if that's the quality of both her writing and her thinking. This is someone who is.
Do you think she wasn't capable of being governor of Alaska?
Being governor of Alaska, Alaska has something like a tenth the population of Brooklyn. 500,000 people, that is being kind of, that is the size of maybe being superintendent of a mid-sized school district. I'm sure I wouldn't have voted for her if I was in Alaska, and by all accounts she's not doing a very good job, and part of the reason she's quitting is because even the Republicans in the state legislature are rebelling against her and defeating her various initiatives. So no, she probably shouldn't have been governor of Alaska, but that's certainly about as high as she could conceivably go. And the idea that, again...
But she impressed some key people like William Kristol, and she obviously got past John McCain. How did all of that happen?
Well, I think it's two things. She
did best Joe Biden in the vice presidential debate. I think we have to remember that.
I find that astonishing. If that's how you saw it, I find that amazing. To me, Oh, I don't think that's true. I think that most people, that the bar was set. I mean, all the polls showed that everybody thought Biden had won. The bar was set so abysmally low that, assuming she didn't either, go start speaking in tongues or start crying, people were going to say she exceeded expectations. But I thought it was
You really
absolutely
don't like her.
Oh, I thought it was the most disgraceful performance. I thought it was just like the fact that she kept winking and these ridiculous little folkisms. I mean, I was
Who's crazy now?
aghast.
Why does she make you? She's driving you crazy. She drives a lot of people crazy.
Well, I hate her.
Why the intensity of this hatred? I mean, I'm not seeing you. I'm just hearing you. But it sounds like you're really wound up about her. Why is she bugging you so much?
Yeah, no, I thought about that. And I know that I actually was thinking about that, and because I know that this is the right wing. Critique. Aha, she drives all those liberals crazy, so she must be fantastic. And I should say, I don't know that she does drive me crazy. I mean, I certainly would be. Look, I'd be disappointed if she doesn't run for president. It's not that I want her to kind of exit public life in the same way that I, wish that Cheney would never be heard from again. So in a sense, but she does. I mean, in a sense, she was. Before Sarah Palin, it would have been, the idea of a female Elmer Gantry would have made no sense. It would have been incredibly hard to picture. And I always think of her as this kind of, did you ever see that movie, now I can't remember what it's called, with the Gus Van Sant movie with Nicole Kidman?
To Die For.
To Die For. I see her as some kind of mix of that Nicole Kidman character and Elmer Gantry, and she does.
Well, she's not killing people.
She certainly not the killing people part. More the kind of like crass and vulgar and mindless ambition married to like complete emptiness and soullessness.
And being able to be successful by being extraordinarily pretty.
But
you get a leg up just by being that beautiful. And then people want to use you. Well, but I think in her case, it's not so much. Well, I think she has a lot of ambition, but I think other people are investing in her. They're trying to. They see her as the figurehead for their ambition. Because
I think in a way
so
she was
attractive.
like Michael, and she was also such a sad. I see her as the Republican Party. It seems to me has this kind of preposterous habit of nominating kind of pitiful imitations of the real thing, so okay, we had Hillary Clinton, well, let's give him a woman, Sarah Palin, then we have Barack Obama, okay, let's give him Michael Steele. It's, to me, she's very much like Michael Steele. It's like black people and women are just like, anyone will do. And I agree, in a way, the part of the reason I hate her is, probably part of the same reason I hated George Bush. She's, the apotheosis of a kind of proudly ignorant, incredibly smug, incredibly anti-cosmopolitan.
She is very good at stating classic conservative principles in a way that speaks to the people who find it most appealing, the sort of ordinary Americans who want to, work hard and
I don't think that's ordinary Americans. I think that to
Who do you think
say
she's
that she
appealing
speaks.
to? I think
Well,
she's plain spoken. I think
speaks
similar to Reagan, that she's able to articulate conservative principles. Now, my son.
I actually think there's a huge difference between her and Reagan.
Wait, I'm going to just say something. I
Okay.
practiced what I was reviewing what I wanted to say with one of my sons, and he said, "Don't say the word articulate with respect to Sarah Palin, because people don't think she's articulate." But I think that she is good at speaking plainly if she's got the knowledge and the information. I think if she can bone up on things, and if information can be uploaded into her head successfully during this time when she doesn't have to be governor, that she can then speak back to people in language that will reach them. That will
I
make an
agree with you
emotional
that I
impact.
think she probably
if she can get
articulates
up to
certain-
speed, she could be great.
No, I don't think that's
and we
true.
have
Because I
the
think you
visual
can feed someone
component. We
information,
need
but
the
you
person
can't
to be
feed someone the
attractive.
ability to analyze, and you can't feed someone the ability to think on their feet. I think that she certainly articulates very well the resentments of a section of America. I think it's ridiculous to call them ordinary Americans, as if the other 80% or whatever as if the majority that has a negative impression of her are somehow, I don't know, elitist or French. I mean, I think there's a lot of ordinary Americans who find her appalling.
One thing that I have to disagree really strongly with the statement that she articulates resentment. I think she gives a very positive view, and that it's the kind of conservative view that you hear on Rush Limbaugh too, which is that it's a very positive message about how people can succeed and working hard and what a great country it is, all of that sort of thing. If you want to talk resentment, I think Barack Obama channeled far more resentment than she ever did when he spoke of the bitter people who cling, the bitter people who cling to guns and religion. That was an attempt to reach ordinary people through a view of them that they're resentful. And I don't think that that's the conservative position that she's in, that she would be good and has been good at articulating.
See, I don't think that everything. Even if you look at her speech, it was all about the media. The media's out to get me. They don't report the good news. They don't report the good news that I'm doing here. Nobody ever gives a fair shot to those patriotic Americans who just want to work hard and reach for something. It's the same kind of, to me, quiet American type of thing that Nixon went for. I mean, she's like a gorgeous, sunny Nixon, except without Nixon's incredible, foreign policy chops.
So you could say she's like Reagan, and isn't that what the Republicans need?
I guess this is, to me, she's more like a caricature of Reagan. I think about, for example, my parents. My parents voted for Reagan twice, and would never in a billion years vote for Sarah Palin. They think, I'm trying to think of the right analogy. I mean, I guess I see her as kind of like a, Reagan repeated as just incredible farce. I mean, I think what Reagan did was take certain far-right memes and package them in a way that was palatable and spoke to broad swaths of the populace. What I think Sarah Palin does is basically truss up the ideas of the John Birch Society in a pretty package, but there's very little appeal there for anybody who would kind of otherwise blanch
look, in this period when she is laying the groundwork for running for president, she will hone her message. She will work with people who will be able to get it into the best possible form. And you might say, well, sometimes her message hasn't been exactly well positioned, but if she's going to run for president, she's got to be working with people who will help her get it just right. And the conservative message isn't very complicated. You don't really need to be that smart to sell it. You need to be smart to come up with all of these elaborate policies. And frankly, I don't think Obama is doing a very good job at coming up with these policies. They're just throwing all sorts of elaborate legislation that they don't even read at us. It's frightening. But the conservative message is more about not doing things and small government and releasing private enterprise, private initiative to do things. So I actually think it can be presented in a much simpler way. And you
I agree with you that the Republican position can be presented simply because it's simplistic. And so, yes, it's certainly easy to say small government, cut taxes. I mean, the fact that, as far as I can tell, that has nothing to say about addressing any of the aspects of our kind of current crisis is a whole other story. But it's not even that I certainly think that Sarah Palin, if coached, could learn to, recite the conservative credo. But the idea of being able to process information, think on your feet, respond to debating tactics without, or, kind of actually engage in a debate, and not just kind of wink and say, well, I'm not going to answer the questions you ask me. I'm going to come here and say what I meant to say. There has to be some degree of engagement. I think that, just as you were saying, I think that it's a mistake it's a mistake to so underestimate politicians that we assume that just anybody can do it. And I don't mean, I think she can do the speech giving and she can do the crowd rallying. She can certainly do the campaigning part, but she is just, I didn't think George Bush was smart enough, but she makes George Bush look like Barack Obama.
Well, we'll find out. I mean, I'm assuming that she's running for president. We don't even know that yet. If she does it, she will be put through the ringer, and we'll find out. If she can't do what she needs to do, she'll fall by the wayside in the natural process. What's the point of getting all exercised about it now? I mean,
well, I'm not
it seems
even,
that there's something more about it.
I'm
that's
not
just driving
necessarily
you nuts.
exercised about it because, like I said, I really hope that she does run for president. I mean, I really, really do. I find her, kind of amazing as a Rorschach test, and clearly she, hits a nerve for me, and I'm not totally sure what it is, because part of it, yes, is that I think that she has, it's not just that she's beautiful. I mean, I think that, for example, Condoleezza Rice is an absolutely gorgeous and glamorous woman who I disagree with politically, but who doesn't, her voice is certainly not like nails on a chalkboard to me.
Well, there's something about the fact that she is maternal. I mean, unlike
no, that's
Condoleezza
weird.
Rice,
I've seen that a bunch. I know that that's kind of the conservative line that barren lefties like me are just angry because here's a woman with a bunch of kids, but
she's
certainly not.
Yeah.
That's really that part. I think that no matter how introspective I am, I certainly Nancy Pelosi is a very maternal woman with a very large family. That's definitely not it. Although I guess I'm slightly irritated by the fact that she both kind of claims motherhood as a qualification for higher office, as she did as a vice presidential candidate, and kind of puts her kids out there, and then at the same time whines and talks about how one of the reasons she's leaving office is because people have made cracks about her children, which, while inexcusable, strike me as much milder than say the kind of thing that people said about Chelsea Clinton.
Everyone uses the ammunition they have, and given the absolute nastiness that people have hurled at her children, she, as a good politician, should throw that right back. Absolutely. I mean, she's not really saying whether she can handle it or not. She's just using one of the weapons she has, which is
how has it been absolutely nasty? Everybody,
and that is an appealing thing that gets a response from many people, especially women, who might vote for her. That idea that these liberals are so vicious that they attack children.
Right, you're right.
Well,
I think you're right that it'll get a response. I think I think the idea that people have been more vicious to her children again than to say Chelsea Clinton is preposterous.
Oh, people had hands off Chelsea Clinton.
What?
No one talked about Chelsea Clinton.
What are you talking about? McCain was the one who, didn't he say something about, I don't even remember. Janet Reno was her father. Didn't Rush Limbaugh call her a dog?
Rush Limbaugh said something at one point in the early 90s and immediately
So
took
who
it
said
back.
anything about, who's talking about Sarah Palin's kids? David Letterman made a stupid joke which she milked for a week.
Oh, well, what about Andrew Sullivan going on and on about Trig? That's been crazy.
But that's not about her.
That's crazy.
Well, but that is, what do you think was up? Okay, yeah, I don't think that
there's
anything to
totally
that. I do think it's a weird story.
Well, now, I think some of it is just, I think Andrew Sullivan just has a gut-level hatred of Sarah Palin, and you seem to have not as bad, but a real gut-level negative reaction to her that I'm just trying to understand where it comes from.
I felt the same thing about George Bush. I really did.
If she's such a bad candidate, she won't make it. Why are we making such a big deal?
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of people I hate. I don't necessarily think they're going to be president.
I'm trying to think. Why all this emotion? What is this about?
Well, I don't know. I guess I probably feel a similar level of loathing towards, say, Sean Hannity. There's something about these kind of bullying, vulgar embodiments of the red state id that I find, viscerally appalling. And so in as much as people are cheered by the ability of Sarah Palin to evoke a kind of emotional reaction in people like me, I say, yes, hallelujah, point taken. If that's what you want in a candidate, somebody who will, someone who will make me wince every time she opens her mouth, then Sarah Palin is your lady.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't get that excited about politics. I think it's kind of weird when I see people getting really, just having a really visceral, negative reaction to somebody. They're just people. They have, I think sometimes we lose the chance at people who would actually be really good just because something about the way they talk or the way they wink or whatever
Yeah, but it's not the way she talks or the way she winks. It was it was the demagoguery. It was the howling crowds that I felt like she's certainly not responsible for everything people say at her rallies. I feel like
people were thrilled to finally get somebody who was telling it straight from the conservative position that was a good
So they were going to basically howl, for the murder of a competing candidate. To me, those things looked, I don't know, it was like polyester Nuremberg.
Wait. Are we getting back to murder again? Are you mixing in Nicole Kidman again? What?
No. I'm talking about the people. I'm talking about, at her rallies, the people who would hurl either racist epithets or else, talk about
that was all debunked. That didn't happen.
That wasn't debunked. I saw the video.
Somebody said something once was that even one of her. Somebody in an audience said you can destroy a candidate by just sending someone into the audience to yell something? I mean,
no, but I don't think it was. I think, like I said, she's not responsible for everything that everyone in her audience says. But I think that those audiences, there was this kind of ugly, Weimar kind of hatred that I felt like she both stoked and fed on, and maybe that to me she did. She seems like the id of the, kind of angry, paranoid underbelly that has given rise to things like the John Birch Society, that gave rise to the weird...
You're just letting her be a magnet for all the things you don't like. They're just all jumping
Well, that's
right
the thing. I
onto
don't know. You're right. To a certain extent, you're right. But I also think that she is the perfect embodiment of all the things I don't like.
So she has a galvanizing effect, and the effect on you is obviously very negative, but that's the other side of what is the positive effect.
Right. Well, I get that, but I guess I don't know. I mean, maybe I have, maybe Barack Obama has so heightened my opinion of my fellow Americans that I don't believe, although I think you're right. It is and they love her for the reasons I hate her. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that there's enough of them, and I don't think she reaches anybody outside of that. I really don't.
Yeah, I don't think in the end she'll be successful, but I think we can be mellow, wait and see what she does, and respond to whatever she puts out there when she puts it out there. But we seem to feel like we need to talk about it. I didn't think we'd be able to go for 52 minutes. I thought we would have to milk it to get to half an hour, but we've gone to 52 minutes. I think that's something.
Right.
Something
okay, so that is a talent that is something I suppose I have to give her credit for.
She unleashes a torrent of expression in you.
Well, I mean, you don't know me well, but it actually doesn't take much to unleash a torrent of expression in me.
Okay. Well, I know that you were expressive in that last dialogue about Sanford, so I was interested in that too. And but that was really we only had our one topic, Sarah Palin, with a little Sanford thrown in on the side. So
I'm not sure. There's not that much else to talk about after a long weekend.
Well, there's the total screw up at the Washington Post, but we'll leave that to somebody else to do later in the week, I think. So shall we call it a Sunday night and wrap up?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Well, it was nice talking to you.
Okay, it was fun talking to you. Bye-bye.
Okay.